Welcome to today's session and discussion on all things design thinking, creativity, innovation. I'm excited to be introducing today's co-hosts of today's discussion. I'm Audrey Markham. I am our strategic partner manager at Inflectra, and I'm excited to just get right on into the introductions. First, I'd like to introduce Hirsch Wardhan. He is a seasoned innovation strategist and has led transformative projects in the tech and automotive industries. Currently, Hirsch leads a customer-facing innovation program, piloting over 50 high-complexity engagements with global organizations, including Fortune 500 companies. And as an expert in leveraging innovation methodologies, Hirsch is a sought-after leader and speaker as well. He excels at unlocking business value using human insights in ambiguous scenarios, with outcomes that span decades into the future. Super excited to have you here, Hirsch. And next, I'd like to introduce Adam Sandman, who is our founder and CEO of Inflectra. He currently focuses on company strategy, thought leadership, and strategic business development. Prior to Inflectra, Adam worked as a director for the Sapient Government Services, where he led development with the U.S. Marine Corps and other government agencies. Outside of Inflectra, he has given many thought leadership talks and industry events as well. And so, given those introductions, I think I'll just kind of start the discussion with a big question here. So there's a lot of hype around AI and AI tools currently. Everyone wants to use it, but we're all really not sure how to. Are companies, in trying to quickly get into this market, all building the same thing?
Before we get into any answers, I do want to give this disclaimer that anything I'm going to say on this webinar is purely my thoughts and my experiences, my learnings. Nothing of this represents any of the companies that I have worked for or currently work for.
Thank you. Do you want to go ahead and though with that disclaimer and give us your thoughts? I'm curious to.
Yeah. So AI. Oh my God, how many times have I heard that since the last 1.5 years? I got maybe millions. I'll start with an example. I was doing some browsing this morning, and on my browser of choice, there was an option: create themes with AI. And if you use multiple browsers, you would know exactly what I'm talking about. And I was like, yeah, this is great, but why did you have to mention AI? And that made me go into a rabbit hole of thoughts that, well, it's true. Anything digital that you're doing today, if it is so-called state-of-the-art, it is going to mention AI, and it will say that what you do is powered by AI, or you could achieve so much more with the AI. And that reminded me of the early times of the internet, when we were, when everybody wanted to build us a website, no matter what business you were, no matter what type of work you were doing, or even as a personal brand, everybody wanted to build a website. And that's the phase that we are in with AI. I mean, some people might argue that we are already done with the early adoption. We are not. It is going to take a while, but it is going to be much quicker. Other thought that I had, and this example that I recently listened about in a podcast, was pets.com. So when pets.com was founded, I mean, if for those who are not aware, pets.com sells a bunch of pets-related goods and merchandise that you can buy from. So when it was founded, it was a novel concept, pets.com, where you could find everything related to pets, and that's good. And it was riding the dot-com bubble, just like every other company at that point of time. Now, it raised a lot of funding, and the trajectory looked good, but eventually it filed for bankruptcy. So what's the catch? Was it not able to ride the wave? was it not able to, get all the goodies that come with the internet and utilize it for business? Maybe it did, but nothing suffices for a good business model, a good money making model, than the technology. Did I say it right? Did I frame it right? Basically, if you don't have a good business model, if you're not providing a good user value, technology is not going to take you anywhere.
Well, it's
And
interesting you mentioned that. Yeah, because I remember working at Sapient during that dot-com era, and it was a crazy time where many Sapiens clients and others in our industry were name of a noun.com. Whatever you were in the business of, pets, government, uh, staples, anything was .com. And I remember someone was saying at the time, we should just sell dollar bills online for 90 cents and raise money. And that's what you were doing,
yeah,
basically.
exactly. And the funny part is, and I'm only, assuming, um, the people who got really rich at that time, apart from the ones that we know, were the ones who were selling those names, who bought in early on those noun.coms and then sold it for I don't know how much, because you can't get them these days.
Yeah, the
So just
cyber squatters.
yeah. So just
Did
as a
you
joke.
ever do that, by the way? Did you ever buy any of those?
I couldn't, not for reselling purposes. I always tried to find my name .com, but couldn't find it. Eventually, I found the short version of it. I still pay for it, and they keep increasing the price. So,
Yeah, that's true. I have adamsandman.com and it just redirects to my LinkedIn profile currently.
oh,
May stop someone else getting it.
I should check that out.
It's funny you mentioned about it's really about engineering thinking. I mean, if you look outside of technology for a second, in the rest of the world, and if you're looking at, like, say, civil engineering, my son's currently an aerospace engineer as well, and
Yeah,
so I've always been brought up in this idea of engineering thinking. And I originally did science and physics at university, so I come from sort of an engineering background. You start with the business problem and or even the hypothesis, and then you try and solve that in a variety of ways. Uh, well, what materials to use in the engineering sense, hardware or in the software world. You look at
yeah,
what framework. So the business problem might be, I need a way to get my goods to market. And in the .com days, people would say, I need my website. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe you need a marketplace channel on an existing e-commerce platform that's
yeah,
already established. Because
yeah,
in the bricks and mortar world, not every single product category had its own store.
yeah,
Manufacturers typically sold to retailers, but manufacturers were building their own websites. So were the retailers, so were the wholesalers. Everyone was trying to sell the same products at different tiers in the supply chain without any thought as to what was the business model that was going to emerge.
yeah,
As you mentioned, so you start with the business problem, then you find a tech solution. Here, it's
yeah,
it's just like it was on the internet. We've got it back on its head, which is, I have some Gen AI. Gen AI, anyone? What can I do with it?
yeah,
Um, and one thing that's also very interesting about AI is that we've had AI for a long time. Amazon had product recommendations for a long time in its online catalog, as everyone knows. Netflix has recommendations. There's AI algorithms being used all the time. Go to the airport, your facial recognition is being used when you go to the airport now. So many applications of AI have been used. Weather predictions, stock market, insurance forecasting, actuarials. AI is everywhere, but we didn't know it was AI. We just knew it was a better insurance price or a faster, or maybe not faster, experience at the airport, depending on how well it was done. But AI was the technology; it wasn't the product. It seems like AI has become the product. Why is that, do you think?
I think, well, that's a very, very good point that you mentioned, Adam, because you know it has been there. AI and machine learning go hand in hand. It has been there. I mean, even if you think about social media platforms, they are using it in the background, learning about us, because for social media, we are the product, right?
Right.
So how do we become the product? Because it has learned about us and it's using AI algorithms for better targeting. So it has been there. Uh, and I was just giving a commercial uh, example that we have more interface with as individuals. But to your other point, what generative AI has done at large is that put the raw power in the hands of the people. That's why everybody is more aware. And when people become more aware about any technology, businesses want to utilize that awareness, utilize that hype to create new business products and push it. Even you talked about Amazon's recommendations. There are so
Mhm.
similar products by other companies as well that have been used in B2B environments for a long time. I mean, in technology, what is long? But let's say last 10 years, right? It
Mhm.
has been used. We have seen that. It's there are so many products that people are pitching today, and we have seen that in some different form, some different application, um, just before that. And that is where innovation comes in. What is innovation, right? Innovation is, it's not something that you make entirely new, because that is invention, when you're creating something new from scratch. When you're using something that has been used in a different context, in a new context, creating new value for the business, for the users, that's innovation. So that's what has happened. We have utilized the knowledge that existed to create more consumer facing, more hands on for people, more democratized products and services. And one of the example would be your chat GPT, that people are realizing the power of it. I think that's the reason why um, it's it's more talked about now. It's more, uh, let's say, on your face now.
Right, right. Yeah, November 2020. Is it 3 or 2? I think it's 22 still. I remember when they first used ChatGPT, and I think you're right. It was the chat interface gave people who are non-programmers, non-technologists, because there've been APIs. I mean, AI engines have been around for a while, and you can use APIs if you're a programmer to access them. There are many tools using AI, but this was the first time that someone like my mother, in theory, could probably figure out how to use it and find it useful, or and people who are students using it to answer papers. And it was the first consumer application of AI, as opposed to it being, I think, an enabling technology. So maybe you have to separate generative AI itself from the consumer technology, which is sort of the chat interface or the interactive interface. That's the product, and that maybe is distinct from the AI LLM backend that is
Yeah,
being used in a lot of other things where it doesn't necessarily need to be rewritten with AI, as you said. Like, for example, I go to LinkedIn, it will often say rewrite with AI. I'm like, why would I want to rewrite with AI? But it might say spell check, improve grammar check. And I'd be like, oh, I would do that.
exactly.
So I think that's the difference. That's not a chat interface. That's literally a tool. So why call it AI? It just tell me what it does.
Exactly. And that is what I was thinking this morning. Why are you slapping AI in front of everything and saying, do this with AI, do that with AI? But the simple reason is because it's marketing. You have to do that. You have to make people understand that you are, latest and the greatest and state of the art, um, to make them buy in.
Well, it's true. We've had customers come to us and say, I want to understand your AI strategy. In fact, I have a demo, without mentioning the client, tomorrow, where I have to show our AI features. And it's unfortunate, but that's the only way we got the meeting, is because we said we have AI features. I could say we have amazing features that can take a user story, a design thinking, and turn it into some automation test cases and automated scripts, completely end to end. I wouldn't have to mention the word AI at all, and just
Yeah,
explain it's a way to do testing more efficiently. And they would
yeah,
say, "No, that's boring. We don't need that." You say the exact same thing with AI. They're like, "Oh, let's have the meeting." So I think it's
yeah,
unfortunate, but in sales, it's sort of a necessary evil. But like the internet, e-business. Remember the old IBM e-business? Everyone
yeah.
was e-business. Everyone was e something, whatever e was.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like, they started slapping the small I that stood for internet in front of everything. and
Yes.
and I'm just speculating here, maybe all the I products were born like that because they were connected to the internet somehow, and everybody wanted to get into that internet frenzy.
The iPhone, a lot of the Apple products, and
Yeah,
and a lot of domains now are .ai, blah 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 .ai rather
yeah,
than .com.
yeah,
Maybe because the domain has been cyber squatted, so it's the only way they can get the domain. But
yeah. And
yeah,
sorry, just this last point about slapping AI in front of everybody, everything and everybody, because um, I think it was near the end of 2020 and 2023, and I was looking at LinkedIn profiles, and so many people that I knew had now badge of AI expert of some sorts in their headline. And that's like, you see, it has also percolated into personal branding and personal marketing. And I would not lie, Adam, here. I called myself an AI enthusiast in one of those LinkedIn headlines. And then eventually I removed it because it's just branding at the end of the day.
Hmm. Yeah, the question I was wondering, what are your thoughts on how this is going to affect, the human experience, the user experience? Because one of the things I think people worry about in the creative disciplines is that if a product manager or I don't know, an entrepreneur is going to start a business or launch a new product, depending on where they are. Whereas before they would hire a team of creative designers and people to come up with a new idea. Using AI, they can generate something that sort of looks good, sort of maybe works. Are we just are we going to drown in a sea of mediocrity? What's the future of design and creativity out there?
That's a very loaded existential question, Adam. Um, because I have these conversations on everyday basis with friends, families, coworkers. Um, so okay, I'll take parts to this question. The first part would be, how is it going to affect the people who are creating? And I think this is the deepest part of it. Um, Creatives, designers, or anyone who's creating something through knowledge, their experience and how they do things is going to change. And we have to change with it. So the existential question that I keep asking everybody: how do you think your work is going to change, and what is your core skill set which cannot be replaced by AI? And I'll just take an example of UX design because I have a background in that, and you know I've created so many wireframes, UI mockups, interactions, whatnot, and all of that can be done through a few typing queries and then request to any AI tool, or even take a picture and it'll convert it into some sort of app diagram or wireframe or flow, which is mind blowing because we used to take a lot of time to create that back in the day.
Hmm.
So, what what is our core skill sets? And now, what I'm going to say is true for almost more of these creative domain skill sets. um, Even though I do believe that it is a little unfortunate, at least when we talk about art or like really creative stuff, and I'll come to that. But I think the core skill set that is going to remain is thinking. And not only thinking, but asking questions. Like, how do you make that AI work for you? What is, and they have renamed it to uh, prompt engineering because we have to rename everybody. And this is actually a quote from one of my esteemed coworkers, that English is the new programming language.
Hmm.
uh, and you have to be very good at asking questions to the technology so that it can work for you. uh, so again, going back to the example of UX, if you don't understand what a good user experience demands, you cannot create it with the AI. So then that brings us to the point that AI is a tool right now. It is very smart, but it's not general intelligence that we have. We'll get there someday, and we'll see how that changes the world. But right now, in the near future, you have to be very good at using these tools and asking questions, asking the right questions to make it work. So that was the first part.
Hmm.
So how does it changes experience um, as consumers of these creative domains? In two ways. One is the first one is, how do you differentiate between real and fake? Um, and by real and fake, I mean by handmade or brain made than AI made. I think that is the distinction we have to make. And then the second part is, does that really matter anymore? Because if they get good enough or at par or even better, then what are we buying? Are we buying experience, or are we just buying um, something because it was handmade? So that is like a
Hmm.
philosophical question that I ask. Like those handmade, fantastic handmade arts, right? Are we art collectors, or are we looking to solve a problem with a better experience that we don't care about who made it?
I guess
So
the difference between your art and versus industrial design. I mean, if you want to use a new consumer physical product hardware, and it was made by a CAD, CAD tool that a human did, or maybe it's an AI assisted CAD design that became industrially produced. Maybe you
yeah,
don't care. It doesn't matter. It's just another way of producing consumer products. If
yeah,
on the other hand you're buying limited art that's supposed to be rare and unique,
yeah,
you're buying it from a monetary quality of it itself as opposed to its function. So I guess it's
yeah,
that form function dialectic. Another thing I always find very interesting is like the fact that vinyl has come back. We have digital music, which and yet people still hearken for a physical experience, which creates more rarity and has imperfections. And whereas AI seems to have, when you look at art, well, look at designs from AI, it certainly seems to be slightly too perfect. It doesn't have some of those human imperfections that we actually crave for. But the one thing that's interesting, I think, is if you look at the state of the art, if you were to start a small company, depending on your funding, or you were doing, let's say, a PowerPoint presentation, even simpler. I mean, there's people who are great designers who could create you an amazing presentation, and then there's a whole bunch of people who are using clip art. If the AI tools are basically helping the people who create using clip art to go from that to something that's a bit more organic, that's more created for purpose for that specific presentation, we may be removing mediocrity and actually improving the average of the art. And I suppose back to the UX design question, if you're a UX designer, was your core skill that knew how to do wireframing, or was your core skill that you knew that to create a design that when it was put into a wireframe was amazing? And so I suppose, so if what you're doing is giving that person more time to create something amazing, and the
yeah.
AI renders it more quickly into a wireframe or into materials that are useful for development or review or for a client to look at, then you're giving that person potentially more time to be creative and come up with the innovative idea, and less time rendering it into some format that is consumable. I don't know. What do you think?
It's I think you already said it. What I'm going to say, it's the creation of the amazing. So um, let me think of an example. When we think of user experience, let's dissect the term experience. Experience is not only one thing. Experience is made up of different elements to a complete product or design, be it physical or digital. If you think about an app, how many times have you downloaded an app because it looked good on the Play Store or the App Store, and the icon looked professional over the other one, and you downloaded it and you made a profile and you got into it, and then you're like, this is so clunky. I like the old one better.
Yep.
Right? So what happened there? Um, the branding was great. Maybe the user interface which you're looking at was great. Maybe the buttons were shaded nicely, but the experience behind that, the flow that you would have taken, is not good. It's
Hmm.
clunky. So there was disparity between what you saw and what you experienced. And I'm only talking about two elements here. There are many more experience, especially think about the physical domain. It's also what you touch, feel, hear, like the five modes of human factors. All those come into play. So I think bringing all that together and creating something amazing with it will still exist, but then not in the traditional ways that you have done it. It's going to be much faster if you use the AI tool. So, talking about the small company, like if somebody is doing a startup or a new company, my recommendation is always that yes, if you put brains behind it, real brains behind it, real people behind it, maybe the product will um, be perfect when you launch it. But when you're doing a startup, it's not about launching the perfect product. It's about launching an MVP and then
Hmm.
scaling it and iterating it, which is also a core idea in the innovation domain. So Utilize the AI tools as much as you can to super fast and supercharge your work and the product that you're doing, that you're making, product or service or experience
Mhm.
that you're making, to get it out there. Because with AI tools in its current form and what we are going to see in a couple of years, it's just, it's, if not better, it is going to be at par at what we are able to create with our um, bare hands now.
So the cycle of innovation and creative destruction is likely to be faster.
Oh, it's going to be so fast. It is already, it already is. And Clayton Christensen in his Innovator's Dilemma talks about disruptive innovation and sustainable innovation. Disruption is going to happen more faster. And speaking of disruptive innovation, the core idea behind that, one of the core ideas behind that, is that it disrupts from bottom. So if this is the great product,
Hmm.
it disrupts from bottom, um, by bringing at par experience at a lower cost. So if you think about that, that's what I was talking about, like the
Hmm.
startups that you make at par MVPs at a much lower cost, and then you disrupt the market. That's
And
one example.
right, and you can iterate faster as to from above, at par to be on par.
Yeah,
I mean, thinking about how I started the Inflectra years ago, because it was a small company, you take an established product segment, and we said, we'll take that established product segment, let's create a product that's X% cheaper, and has a more modern interface and is maybe easier to deploy. The entire experience was meant to be easier, not just the software itself, but the process of buying it, the process of trying it. We were at that point, this is 18 years ago, so it was the process of signing up for a trial, trying it yourself, self-service on self-onboarding, which
yeah,
now is normal, but was revolutionary 18 years ago when we were
yeah,
competing against customers that had these traditional sales processes where you would come to an office with a black folio, you would do a demo over lunch, and you bought the tool maybe 90 days later, and all that stuff. So the experience and of people trying a new product in the SaaS domain went from these, very slow Leviathan processes to what we see today, where you sign up for a trial, like it, credit card, and you're done. And you have to be selling to the consumer. So it was such an easy to use product.
yeah,
And that was basically just coming up with above at par, at cheaper user experience, and then very quickly iterating to become above par.
yeah,
And that was without AI. With AI, you could basically build an application that's maybe 10% more usable, 30% less expensive, and potentially through 6 months after that, it has functionality that the old tool does not even have yet,
yeah.
because the speed.
Exactly. And it goes back, like, I cannot reiterate it enough times that you have to learn to work with it. And I'll quote another example, which I absolutely love. For those who have watched it, who are watching this webinar, will know. And I don't know if Adam and Audrey, if you have watched it, the Hidden Figures movie.
The one about the NASA scientists?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't that exactly what's happening? the
Yes.
whole the whole human computers group was going to be replaced, but then they retrained them on the new IBM machines to be able to
Right.
use it,
Mhm.
because the people who actually bought it were not able to. Um, and the magic happened. So it's the same thing all over again.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I think the other thing I've been to a lot of conferences this year in the software testing domain. That's an area we have a lot of customers, and everyone's very afraid. I've been very afraid in the testing domain that their jobs will be replaced by AI, and developers are worried about it too. But I keep
Yeah,
telling people, if you think about how we used to make clothing, I mean, traditionally clothing was made as a handcrafted art with sewing needles, and on a bench you would sew, and in sweatshop conditions in many cases, and then eventually we had machines that would make shirts and do the fabrics, and increasingly the human experience wasn't about the sewing, it was about designing the shirt, making sure it fit well,
Mhm.
coming up with the untucked type of shirt, and then
yeah,
it was also who's on the assembly line making sure these shirts are actually, there's not stitches missing, it's the QA. So we're moving software development, and the software lifecycle is moving to more of a factory model where it won't be a bunch of developers handcrafting web pages, lovingly making a screen that is 90% like the last screen they did, because that's boring. But it's a lot of what development has been traditionally. It's boilerplate software coding that you nick off sort of Stack Overflow or from your last project, and it's not exciting. Yeah, so the software developers will go from basically lovingly handcrafting boilerplate code, which they really don't like to do, to coming up with new technologies and new experiences very quickly. And the
Yeah.
QA profession is going to be going from looking at requirements and systems and going, okay, check this, to be like, well, this AI has learned something. How do I test that? I mean, so the testing domain becomes exciting because you're trying to understand how this dynamic machine model is learning. So, for
Yeah.
example, self-driving, I need to mention automotive, self-driving cars are learning how to drive
Yeah.
in ways that we don't fully predict. And maybe
Yeah.
they'll learn to drive better and differently. Spacing will be different. How do we test that they're going to be safe? Well, they're probably going to end up being safer than humans. So when we think about testing and the quality assurance around that software update that's going to be pushed to a car, we haven't got a discrete set of requirements anymore that says if it's 100 feet in front of you, slow down. It might be the AI is capable of slowing down at 60 feet in front of you, whatever it is, and still be safer. So our idea of testing and requirements, and it's all much more fuzzy than it was a year or two ago, where I think it was all very discrete and very black and white, and now it's much more of a sliding scale of quality.
It will be, and sometimes we won't be able to tell unless we build that what's happening underneath. And
Right.
it will be all for a better, safer user experience. I know there are safety and concerns and different risk appetite, but we will get there. I'll give you an automotive example, but before that, I do want to talk about job losses. Right? It's the
Hmm.
doomy and gloomy um, topic related to AI that we are hearing all around is or questions being asked that am I going to lose my job? I'll go back to saying not unless you learn how to work with the new tools. So for software developers, right? You said um, the boilerplate code. Maybe you won't create that, but you would be creating something that delivers more value, better value at a cheaper cost because it was not about just typing up the code. It was about your core skill sets to understand how it works behind the scenes, how algorithms work,
Hmm.
how they connect to each other, all of that. Now, as I'm not a coder or a core technologist, but maybe I can write up a code using one of these chat GPTs or generative AI models to create a game in a day or two. That's way too fast for me. But as a coder or a developer, you can do it much faster, which with more finesse, you can debug it better being a coder. All of these things will come into play in any job. Same in UX design. The core skill set of UX design was not to create beautiful buttons. It was about great holistic experiences. So that's what people have to keep in mind when they think about job losses. Now, on the positive type of things, what is that going to lead us to is better, safer experiences overall. It will free us with more time to be able to do things that we love. Although it's not doing it right now. I read this quote, which has become really popular, that I don't want AI to be doing my art. I want AI to be doing my chores. Uh,
Hmm.
and while right now it is doing your art, but the proper evolution is going to happen, and we are not there yet. It'll come really soon. We are not there yet. Is when it starts freeing up your time. And one example, fun automotive example, is driving. If you have been into a say self-driving car which are available to ride in San Francisco, for everyone, by the way, they opened it up for everyone, you will know that you don't have to necessarily be behind the wheels. You can be doing your work, and I the thing that you talked about, how the things change underneath, it's really blurring the lines and literally blurring the lines. So I was in this new self-driving car by this um, consumer automotive company, where you can own one. You know which one I'm talking about.
Hmm.
um, this car, when it is self-driving, it doesn't care about the lines on the road.
Hmm.
And that is, initially I was startled by it, but I see why it is doing that, because it doesn't need those lines, maybe. Right now it does, because it is trying to be in a single lane, but in future, would we still be needing the lanes? That's the question.
No.
Would we still be needing that, see the bumper from where you are sitting? Those kind
If
of
you move to 100% self-driving, the problem now is we're coexisting with human drivers.
exactly.
So the lanes are there for the human drivers to avoid. But imagine you have a net, even if the either network or just radar. I was in a Tesla being driven to the airport from with an Uber driver, and he showed me the self-driving mode, and he was able to change lanes, exit the on ramp, enter the other highway, and its driving style was a little different to a human, more like how I drive actually, more G-force. But it's also learning. And he said there's a city mode and a freeway mode, and it was transitioning from one to the other, and so that's why you get some of that. And it's getting better all the time. Every update he said, and the thing is, he's bought one car, he's getting updates every month, so it's getting better and better. But what's interesting is with the radar, it's seeing all the other cars around you, and so imagine you're on a highway that's of certain width and certain other cars, it could adapt and be safer. For example, if the road is rainy and there's no other cars on the road, maybe you want to be in the middle of two lanes away from the water. You can't, or we want to get more capacity on roads, dynamic roads that would fit congestion more effectively. And it's interesting, the future there.
Yeah, get rid of the traffic jams, please. And it might really happen. And like you said, my friends say this, that my driving style is yeah, is reflected by my car as well. So similar to you. So
My
yeah.
wife says, my wife says we have self-driving cars. She'll be finally happy to drive with me because right now yeah, I don't know. I'm a little careless sometimes because my mind is on other. My thing is, I'm always thinking of other things, and there are people like that who we're not. We're thinking of, oh, what is this great idea for this new product, or like this, and like, oh my god, I'm driving. I should be careful. So I think it's from a safety standpoint, humans are not very good at multitasking. In fact, I remember there was a study saying we don't really multitask. We
Yeah.
simply time slice out, and we do two tasks badly. We don't truly multitask. And
Yeah.
so any human who says they can drive and do something else like eat a sandwich or check their email is not really, it's not, or even even voice stuff is not really that good. And so these humans are very fallible for that. So imagine you've got this self-driving car with maybe human backup. Again, it's the human machine team is right now still better than just the human, and in the future it may be machine only, which is interesting. um what about, you mentioned also about jobs. One other thing I think that's interesting right now is that I feel like everyone's upset about or worried about job losses, partly because there have been lots of layoffs, but part of that's because of the high inflation and the macroeconomic factors. It just so happens that the AI innovation wave has landed at the exact same time that there's been a lot of external economic factors, uh, overinvestment during COVID of certain platforms. And so I wonder, do you think some of this is people taking two discrete economic waves that are separate but happen to be overlaying at the same point in time and drawing non-causal outcomes? Like they're saying there's all these layoffs because of AI, whereas it may be if we didn't have AI, maybe layoffs would have been worse, for example, because of the macroeconomic environment.
I mean, so let me ask you this. Can you simplify the question for me?
Oh, what I'm saying is everyone's worried that AI is taking, because there's been layoffs in tech and people worry it's because of AI. And I wonder if the reason we see some layoffs right now is because people overspent during COVID and money is more expensive than it was 2 years ago. And so people are taking that and conflating it with AI and saying AI is the cause. AI may not be the cause at all. I'm wondering.
So yes, there are job losses today, but you're right, Adam. There are a lot of the reason behind the job losses is the macroeconomic climate, because the kind of, I hate to call it job losses. It almost um, makes AI look as a villain
Hmm.
than a potential helper that it could be. But the kind of job losses, or as I like to call it, job reframes that we are
Hmm.
going to see with AI is not there yet.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's true. I think every time you look at any innovation wave, where it was the internet, it was the mobile smartphone revolution, every time there's been a new technology, we actually, and you look back, you'll say the total employment is bigger. And not just in the jobs that were in the technology field, but all the supporting jobs that go with that.
Yeah,
Um, if you remember the late 80s, they kept saying with computers and the paperless office, though we will have the leisure economy in the 90s and the 2000s. We have the leisure economy. There'll be no jobs. Everyone's going to have to work, figure out what sport they should learn. We were going to have the leisure economy, and yet people, if you look at the hours people work and the productivity, we are more productive than ever, and yet
yeah,
we have more people working and lower unemployment.
yeah,
It's incredible. So I think for the future, I always want to end on a hopeful note. History has shown us time and time again, new technology increases employment globally, not just in the US, but around the world. As we get more connected with technology, it creates more jobs, more opportunities, and we have less time for leisure, it
yeah,
seems like,
yeah.
than we have before.
Exactly. So that's the job reframe, right? The job is being reframed, and you could supercharge what you can do, what your ability is with AI, and there would be more jobs. And I'll speculate an example of that, which kind of we are already seeing in a moment. But yeah, we are going to see some people being out of work, uh, and the time that they are taking to reframe their skill set or learn new skill sets. That is going
Hmm.
to happen. It's not happening yet because um, simply the AI tools are not there yet. It is still under development, early adoption. Coming back to the example that I was thinking about when you were talking about leisure economy, um, think about the customer service industry.
Hmm.
Today, there are a lot of there is a lot of work from home happening in that industry when you would call up customer service and they are simply behind the screens at their home at their leisure, and then they would solve your problem. And I first got to know about it um, when I heard home noises behind the customer service of one of the big airlines, and I was like, wait, where are you sitting right now? I didn't ask it, but I could tell where they are. So imagine a future where you are utilizing AI tools to give you knowledge of your company, of your industry at your fingertips, which is already happening, by the way, but
Hmm.
a much faster access to that knowledge. And that opens up more jobs. Combine this idea with gig economy. I could be working for 5 different airlines at the same time, similar to an Uber driver who's working for Uber and Lyft at the same time. And I can switch
Hmm.
on and off that job based on time, place, day, choice, wage. And it just opens up a whole lot of possibilities for people at different level of experiences, people at different level of time affordances, for stay at home parents. um, my baby is sleeping right now. Maybe I'll take 5 customer calls for this amount of money in the time that the baby wakes up. It's just more doing more work. So now more people are powered to earn more and do more.
And I do say that the stay-at-home parents is like the biggest loss of productive capital certainly in this country. Then I mean, the number of people I mean, when I started in Fletcher, I started part-time with a 2-year-old, and that's one of the reasons I left Sapient, was because I really needed a job that I could work. I mean, I was working, but I was working in my own time in the hours. I always remember that. Like we had public television on, and certain shows were on. I knew that while those shows were on, my daughter's attention would be kept, and I could write code and build the business. And as soon as those shows finished, it was like, okay, we got to go to the park. Time's up.
Yeah,
And that was me as an entrepreneur starting a company, and I
yeah,
accepted that. But there were very few other opportunities at that time.
yeah,
The internet wasn't yet powerful enough to work from home, and companies really weren't ready for work from home. But it's interesting what you mentioned about the gig economy, letting people arbitrage between different employers in real time. It's interesting. I mean, that could well be that you become the professional, airline customer service person, that you work with multiple through intermediary, like a chatbot that says it can do the 20% standard stuff and it reroutes to you when it's a more complex problem needs solving, and therefore you'll as a worker would have experience in figuring out crazy connections or hurricanes and things what to do, and so you would become a much more experienced customer service agent, and you could balance it with your home life, which is pretty amazing that we could do that.
Exactly. And then you don't have to be at a company. Okay. Now I don't want to speak against any company,
No,
but
right.
you don't have to be at a company for 10 years to get the ins and out of those companies. Because, say, again, coming to the a simple example of a chatbot, you could just ask that chatbot about the query that the user asked you, or maybe it's already recording it and it's
Hmm.
answering for you. Because many times in customer service industry, even we could we could solve the problem just by interacting with the chatbot, and companies are implementing it, but nobody wants to do that. People want to talk to a real person all the time. There's
Mhm.
Well,
something.
there is risk though. If you remember, there was that, without mentioning any company names, there was a company chat. There was a chatbot that invented a refund policy that wasn't correct, and and unfortunately, a court agreed that that was a binding commitment. That even though it hallucinated a
Yeah,
refund policy that wasn't the actual refund policy, a court sided that a
yeah,
consumer protection law sided that they had to honor it. So there's
right.
risk. There's real risk.
Yeah, there is risk. So you need a human to intervene there. Um,
Right.
but
But it's
yeah,
true.
it is true. It is true. It can happen.
Um, I think one of the things that needs to really happen from an user experience though is better integration. The number of times you'll use a chatbot, and then when you get to a human, if they can't answer it, you've got to go back to the exact same set of questions with a human. I think what you mentioned about the session history is not well integrated. So from a user experience, you feel like it's a gatekeeper to get you to where you need to go, as opposed to someone helping you. And
Yeah,
whereas if I think it was better integrated, and you knew that by the time you got to a human, it would save time explaining everything, then
yeah,
people would be, I think, more open to using it as well.
exactly. And that's a big pain point, right? I don't know how many times I have cut customer service calls by just this frustration of going back to step zero. And I'm like, I start shouting by the end of it, like, talk to a real person, talk to a
Right, right.
customer rep.
Zero, 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 zero.
Yeah.
Customer rep. Right, right.
So that brings me to another point about building AI tools and AI tools of the future, and solving problems, be it in business or a consumer-facing challenge. I think another aspect of great innovation comes into play even more now. Well, it had to be there all the time, but we got too focused on building technology and making money that we kind of forgot about that. Was user experience, like user value, rather than just bucketing in an experience. What is the
Hmm.
value that you are providing through that tool? And if you think about the innovation framework of desirability, viability, and feasibility, the desirability aspect is more into play now, because I'll take the example of, um, by the way, this is one of my favorite new companies. I think, Adam, you and we talked about that the last time we
Hmm.
spoke. Teenage engineering, right?
Hmm.
Uh, they make amazing, phenomenal, retro-looking hardware with real buttons that everybody is craving these days. They came up with this product, Rabbit.
Oh, the
Um,
rabbit phone. Yes, yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
And it's not a phone. They say that it's not a phone. So we should
Right.
not call it a phone. It's a device which is supposed to run on the AI and solve your problems. But if you look at the reviews of Rabbit, and one of the popular YouTubers, MKBHD, was doing a side by side comparison with an Android phone and a Rabbit phone. Sorry, Rabbit
Device.
device. And the biggest difference was that you don't have to touch a bunch of buttons. You can just ask the Rabbit to do two things, and simple image recognition, right? So what is in front of me? What is in front of me? Those were the two questions.
Right.
And it was faster with the Android device, not with the Rabbit, even though it was just through the um, uh, you know voice control.
Hmm.
So, did they provide a good value other than the early adopter badge to the whoever the user is? Well, maybe they didn't. So, whenever we are building new AI products, or any products or experience or service, for that matter, but more so with AI, we have to think about what is the value that we are generating for the people, for the business, with that technology. And all of us, and that now doesn't only apply to the designers of the world, it applies to anyone who's trying to build something with AI. We have to think about that. What is the value that we are providing?
100%. I
Unless,
think,
Yes.
yeah.
unless AI becomes intelligent and it develops a fake refund policy, like you said, that's very
Or AI is the consumer too. AI may be the consumer of other AIs, but there still needs to be, you're still giving value ultimately to another AI,
yeah,
or an API. If there's something you have to, I mean, if you're not giving value, then why in the first place build something? I mean, that is ultimately
yeah,
a product owner's first question should be,
yeah,
why are we doing this, and what does it give? What does it do for people? As
exactly.
opposed to, I want to build this because it's cool. Let's see who we can sell it to.
Yeah, exactly. The
Yeah.
traditional 100 years model that we had.
Right.
And that absolutely gets back to the main question that we first started with as well. I mean, so many people are trying to include AI in the development of products now, and it's like, well, there's such a rush to do it, but if there's no value, then what's the point of it all?
Exactly.
But yeah, these are really, really interesting discussion. I mean, we covered so much: the democratization of AI, how it affects jobs, core skills that are irreplaceable. So that was a really fantastic conversation. I don't know if you guys have any lasting remarks before we wrap it up today.
I would say, and I think I kept doing this a little bit during the conversation, think about the future. And when I say future, think about the things that we are not even um, imagining yet. Be more imaginative. That is something that we have as a core skill set by birth. Be more imaginative about what you can do with these technology. So futuring becomes a very, very important skill set for product owners and product developers, product service experience developers at this point, because technology is changing fast. But as one of my close friend, advisors, professors say that there are other aspects to the world as well, which are also changing and developing at the same time that AI is happening. So don't have that myopic focus, broaden it out, utilize futuring, and think about the things could happen and work towards that.
Adam, did you have anything or?
One thing I always think about is when you're thinking about the future, it's also important to shut your computer, get a blank piece of paper, and dream a little bit, and not get too similar to what Hirsch said about the myopia of a certain technology. I think it's also talk to people. If you're building a product, talk to customers, and then experiment. And I think don't be too stubborn. It's very easy, and we've all made this mistake of, you have an idea in your mind, so open your mind, come up with a vision, experiment, get validation, and if the validation is wrong, try something different. Don't become too wedded to anything you've designed, because that's very easy to do, and I think it trips a lot of us up. So an open mind, open heart, and look into the future.
Be more imaginative.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, by the way, you mentioned take a blank piece of paper, or you could take a new sheet in the remarkable tablet, which is powered by AI.
You
And
could. But then you'll start looking at 10 different videos on social media and forget where you are. So yeah, that's the danger. If you can keep focused on that blank sheet or on that sheet, that's the key. It's easy to get sidetracked.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Hirsch, so much for this conversation. I feel like we could go on for the next 5 hours, but
yeah.
probably should keep it shorter than that. But yeah, thank you both so much.